Hello everyone. We've previously talked about power bars and plates, and now we're going to talk about power racks. I'm not really going to cover something like a squat stand, and a lot of this that I'm going to say does kind of apply to a half rack, but we're going to focus mainly just on the power racks. Now, because they are large, you do have to kind of think of what kind of power rack you can get and where you're going to put it. A lot of them start off at 8 feet tall, so they might not work for a basement, but there are some companies that will go ahead and cut their power rack down to whatever size you need. Some companies already make a smaller power rack. Like this one is a 7-foot power rack because it was inside a house, so I needed something shorter for an 8-foot ceiling. Then once you get past the actual height, there is the width to consider. Some companies' power racks are wider than others. It doesn't sound like a huge deal, and for the most part it's not a wider power rack. Some of them are wide enough that depending on what kind of bar you have, you can have it sitting on your J-cups and you might hit the posts if you don't have like a clean walkout. So when you're walking out like a squat, or you're moving that bar around, if you don't go pretty much straight back and forth, your plates might hit. Now on the flip side, you might have some that are so narrow that a specialty bar might not fit in there. And so that's why if you go watch like a specialty bar review, they're gonna kind of be like, well, it will fit in this rack and not in this rack. Next thing to consider would be length. That's gonna depend on your place. To me, it's not as big of a deal now when I was set up in actual smaller rooms inside a house. The width did matter, or not the width, I'm sorry, the length did matter a whole lot more, just because a room is, generally smaller than the space we have here. So companies do have different lengths, are usually longer if they're going to have something like a weight storage, and then the actual cage part can be smaller. I know Rogue does a lot that are not necessarily standard inside dimension, they are smaller. Usually shouldn't be that big of a deal. I've never tried one of those. I've heard other people feel like they're a little claustrophobic because they're really worried about walking something out too far, or if something's not clean enough, you're gonna hit the posts. I haven't always had it, but I personally love having the weight stack or a place to put the weights. I used to have, this would be called a 6-post rack because it has 6 posts on it. 4 posts would just be a box, basically. And a 4-post, you can put weight storage on one of your posts. It does work. I used to have a Titan rack. I did have the weight storage on there. What I did find that when I was doing something like a bench, I had to watch out because a 45 and a 45 for a bench, if I didn't set up properly, I could possibly hit the 45 on the weight stack. So that is something to worry about if you have a 4-post rack with weight storage. That's also going to depend on just the length of your actual cage. This weight storage is just metal posts, and it does work just fine. Now, your weight storage can be different depending on what company it is, but some will have a thicker post, and then it might be even covered in like a hard plastic or something to kind of protect your weights and the plates. Since I've had a half rack and now I have this that has the weight storage, I honestly don't know if I could go back. Weight storage is just nice because it is right there. You're not having to carry it from a weight tree or anything. Helps kind of get the power rack a little more solid, especially if you have quite a bit of weight on there. So to me, it's a huge plus. Last thing about these posts and a lot of the terminology around these. You'll hear 3x3, 2x2, 3 or 2x3. All they're talking about is the size of this actual post. So this is a 2x2. So this is 2x2. It just lets you know kind of how big this is going to be. And then the popular version is going to be a 3x3. A 2x2, you're not going to find as many accessories for it as something like 3x3. Now, it's not talked about as much, but some websites might mention a gauge. That's just how thick this actual piece of steel is. And steel, if you don't know, it's kind of opposite of the way you're thinking. A higher gauge of steel is actually thinner. So a 14 is going to be thinner than a 12. It's going to be a lot thinner than something like a 7. So if you see a heavy duty power rack with 7 gauge steel, it's going to weigh a ton. But that's kind of just a basic for, you know, when you're looking at websites and they're talking about 3x3, they're talking about the actual size of the posts. Now let's go over J-cups. J-cups are just where you put the bar. If you notice, this kind of looks like a J, and that most likely is where it gets its name. I don't know. I'm just guessing. They come in all sorts of different styles. This one is just bare metal with a coating on it. A lot will have a protective coating or plastic or urethane on it to help protect the bar, which is nice. It's not a necessity as well. I haven't really noticed any damage on my bars, but at the same time, it's a home gym. But at the same time, like, you can get a cloth protector for them if they are just plain metal. And I've had this for a while. It's holding up really great. So I do like that. Like I said, they come in different designs. Basically what you're looking for is something that's going to hold the bar well. At the same time, you don't necessarily want something with a huge lip. If this lip is too high, you're gonna find that, well, it's hard to get like your squats out, depending on your hole spacing as well, or your bench. So basically what I'm saying is, like, depending on where your holes lie and how tall this is, if you're doing a squat, you might have to have it super low to make it over this lip. When you're doing a bench, you'll hear a lot of people will tell you to kind of pull it against this front lip and then kind of drag it over. If you have a super high lip on here, you're gonna have to kind of pop your shoulders all the way out to get it off. Or you're gonna have to kind of do a little mini bench press just to get it over the J-cups. I know that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. I've actually ended up using a couple of different J-cups, and I can tell you, yeah, it is actually kind of a big deal. I've had some that were really deep, and it was actually rather annoying to get to bench or squat out of those just because they were so deep. Now, there isn't necessarily a whole lot more to say about a J-cup. Most power racks, you'll probably notice that they will only come with one set. You'll have to buy a second set. Some power racks will come with 2. So this one just happened to come with 2 J-cups. It's not vital, but it is nice because quite often what happens is one will be left in like a squat height, and then the other one will be left in the bench height. The point about buying a power rack is so you can work out by yourself or even in a group safely. And to do that, well, they come with safeties. This is called a rod and pipe safety, in that, well, you have a rod going through 2 of the posts, and then you kind of have this loose pipe on top. The theory on the pipe is just that if you drop something, it will vibrate and take up some of the hit. Now, there are a couple of different types of safeties. You'll see kind of a strap. It will come across, it will loop down a little bit, or you'll see something that looks more just like an arm. I don't have much experience with the strap. All I do know is that the straps, you can set them up a little bit differently, so you can kind of set one side higher than the other instead of just trying to set them even, and then that can do things like if you're doing a bench, you can have the side on your head a little bit higher in case it comes back, then it will catch into the safety and roll down. They're a little bit quieter than obviously a metal safety. The arms you got to be a little more aware of, because quite often what people will do is they'll get the arms and then they'll work out on the outside of the power rack, and then that's fine. You gotta just remember that that arm is only so long. The safeties do let you do a lot more exercises, they're not just there to keep you safe. You can do more exercises. You can do the rack pull. You can have these up higher and do your deadlift. So that's rack pull. And you can usually do more weight. Press, you set this up just higher than your regular bench, and then you can bench off of the pins. And that way you can start out at the dead position. You can do the same thing with squats. Well, most of the time you're only going to get one set of safeties, and then you'll have to buy a second set. So if you get a power rack, you just make sure you use the actual safeties. What goes along with the J-cups and the safeties is actually the hole spacing in the power rack. Now, this one happens to have something called, well, west side spacing. And so basically what's going on is it has really close spaces in the area that a lot of people bench in, and then it will go into more of a conventional spacing, and that just makes it a whole lot easier for you to set up something like either your J-cups or your safeties in just the right spot for different people. So this is the first power rack I've had with this in it, and I really enjoy it. Now, the regular hole spacing, that varies quite a lot depending on power rack. Some will be about 2 inch, 2.5 inch. I think that's usually pretty standard. Some are more of a 1 inch. Some are as big as like 3 inches, and then you'll see some power racks that seem to have even larger spacing. They only have a couple holes in the entire power rack. That is going to really depend on you and how many people you're going to be training with, and just kind of what your height is. If you're an average height, then the hole spacing probably is going to work for you in most power racks. If you're tall or short or just happen to be an odd height, then you probably want a power rack that has more hole spacing. I will also say it is nice if you start getting into different specialty bars to have more options for hole spacing, just because that specialty bar might put it in different locations, especially if you're doing something like a squat. Then you're going to need a little higher of a hole, otherwise you're trying to squat the weight up more than you probably want to. Then now, to go along with just the 3x3 and 2x2 that I've mentioned before, the actual holes, those are going to be different as well. Those will be usually mentioned in the websites. So you're going to have like a 5/8 or a 1 inch is becoming more popular. And then that's not necessarily something you have to pay too much attention to if you're going to just get everything kind of all at once, all from the same company, because that company should have kind of everything set up to be on the same page. Now, if you're trying to mix and match things from different websites because you saw some sort of cool accessory, then you're going to need to know what your hole size is, and you'll probably have to do more research, find some sort of video to figure out, hopefully, if it works on your power rack in a review. Another thing to consider when you're looking at the hole spacing is numbers. Some companies will actually cut out the numbers into the power rack. If you're going to go that route, or need a power rack with numbers, that is the route I would suggest. Some will do stickers. Stickers are eventually going to rub off. This one doesn't have any numbers at all. It's not too big of a deal. It's just my wife and I that use it. So we've actually just kind of marked some spots with nail polish. And so we know, like, okay, that's the setting for this. This is the setting for my wife's squat. That's her setting. Then I know, like, okay, I need 1 or 2 holes above her, depending on what bar I'm using, or I need the same hole. So if you're not having a bunch of people on the same power rack, then that's fine. If I didn't have anybody else training on the power rack, I could probably, because I have multiple J-hooks, just set them up and leave them. I would suggest having one with numbers, but it's not vital, because you can also always count the number of holes you need. Just that can become annoying. Other thing about power racks is that they all pretty much come with a pull-up bar. Some companies are going to give you options, some companies are not. I didn't really have an option for this one, but I do actually like this pull-up bar. Some will just give you a straight bar. Others are going to have all sorts of different options of, you can have globes, you can have all sorts of different handles, and you can really kind of pick and choose which one you like the best. This one in particular does have some foam, and it's just kind of bent like your regular pull down bar. The foam is nice. It doesn't have any knurling, but that is fine. They do have this kind of textured powder coat on here. So it doesn't have foam in the center part either for doing like close chin-ups. Then again, a lot of pull-up bars aren't even going to have this foam on here. They might do like a knurling, or they might not do anything at all. Then some are going to have a little option for kind of a neutral grip pull-up. So that's nice as well. It's just a pull-up bar. You know, you're going to have to decide what kind of pull-up bar you want if you have a choice. And some, since this is a 6-post, will actually have options for multiple pull-up bars. So that might make deciding even easier, because then you can just get 2 different kinds that you want. Now, power racks are different. You might find a power rack like this one that has holes in the cross members, both below and up above. Then they usually also either come, or you have to buy separately some sort of post. Those are usually for doing some sort of band work, so you can wrap the bands around the power rack and do your movements. This one also comes with a member, another cross member, where it could have been a pull-up bar, but they put a cross member up there for you to hang up bands. And then finally, this one, that the cross member in the place where you're squatting everything is up off the ground. And basically they did that for, well, especially bigger people, or just people with a super wide squat stance. So you can actually put your foot underneath it and just get that a little bit wider, and you're not hitting the member on your power rack. This particular power rack doesn't have any branding on it, but I did actually get it from Elite FTS. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I'll leave the link in the description down below. This power rack, this is also why I have 2 sets of J-cups, 2 safeties. That's just the way it came. It also came with the bench, and it came as a set. Elite FTS isn't necessarily known for being cheap, but it's a company I like, and it's a company I trust. I know they'll back their products. And then it was made in the US. So it's kind of why I went with this one. It is, I wanted the set, I wanted the bench. They have other options, but this one does come in multiple colors. So for a 2x2 rack, that is nice. You usually do not see that in a 2x2. I didn't go with one of their 3x3s because of the height. I needed something shorter, but an issue with a 2x2, doesn't matter what company, they're not as popular, so you're not going to have as many accessories. This one did come with some dip attachments, So far, I really do enjoy this power rack. It's held up really well because I am not very careful when I am getting bars in and out. So whatever coating they have, it is several layers because I have some scuffs. I have gone through the paint sometimes, but it's really not that bad for how long we've been using it. It's been over a year. It's been both my wife and I. And as I said, I'm not particularly careful getting the bars in and out. I try not to hit it, but it's not a big deal if I do. If you need any more specifics about the power rack, the width here is about 46.5 inches. The length is about 53 inches. The height is, well, it's 7 foot, but then they have a little 2x2 on top for the posts for band work, so it is about 86 inches. Those are the actual specs on this particular rack. That was a lot of information, but hopefully it helps you pick out a power rack. If you have any suggestions for others, or you have questions, leave them in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.